12th principle, the final principle of your project management as per your project management standard. Interesting one, it talks about enable change to achieve the envisioned future state. Now, most of you as a project manager always worry about the change when it comes to project changes, say some deliverable, something has to be changed, but this particular change is not about that. It is about achieving the future state. It is about the change which is created by the project. See, as a project, the nature of project is creating something new, new deliverable, new result, new product, new solution. When something new is coming, wherever this something new will get used, it will change that particular environment. And how do you enable that particular change so that you create a platform to achieve your desired outcome? Yeah. Let us take an example, and before we get into the details here. Your organization wants to reduce operational cost. You are a manufacturing company, you are facing a pressure from the market, the competitors can sell cheap, still make money. You are finding very difficult to sell at those prices and your margins are negative. After doing some amount of research and due diligence, you realized that your operational costs are high. Now, you initiated the project to facilitate the automation, and as an outcome of this particular project, you are expecting this automation will reduce, say, operational cost by 20%. Now, what is expected in this particular project is you want to create an automation robot. Now, this automation robot should help us in reducing the overall operational cost. So, that is the whole scenario situation. Now, you as a project team, project leader created this particular robot. Now, creating this robot not necessarily on its own reduces the operational cost. Now, the change of manufacturing process, change of adapting this robot starts. Now, the change management in this particular case is taking that deliverable robot to the manufacturing facility, explaining the people who are working in the manufacturing space how to use it, resolving their confusions, resolving their fear. Some people maybe end up losing the job because of this automation, taking care of those stakeholders as well. Some people may lose control, someone was managing 20 people and used to sit on that particular line, and this robot will create a new organization structure, new way of reporting, new way of KPIs. This whole thing is changing. So, what is happening here is you created something in your project as a deliverable. When you take that deliverable to the unit, it is expected to be implemented in such a way so that desired outcome can come, and in order to do that you need to support the change. Now, what you are doing is, as a project leader, project manager, you are applying this principle which is saying enable change in the manufacturing unit to achieve the envisioned future state, which is a 20% reduction in the operational cost. Many of you as a project manager never went into that space. Maybe you were only limited to deliverable level, but now it is expected more and more the project managers are doing effective change, because project itself creates something new and you are by default a change agent. So, let us look into little bit details of this particular principle. So, prepare those impacted for the adoption and sustainment of the new and different behaviors, your plant users, and process required for the transition from the current state, which is a manual way of working in the example, to the intended future state, which is having good portion of your manufacturing process automated, created by the project outcomes. So, this whole thing is that this is what we are learning as a principle 12 to enable that particular change. So, what probably will take into account when you want to implement this particular change. So, we want to apply a structured approach for change to keep individuals, groups and organization transitioning from current state to a future desired stage. Now, what could be that structured approach? Maybe you need to have overall roadmap, you need to have plan for maybe a phased implementation, you may need to have an approach to educate people, you may need to convince them about the need of the change. So, many times the structured roadmap talks about we need to start with setting up the right vision, right direction, so that people who are getting impacted really understand the need for the change. So, in this particular case, it could be that if we do not do this, we are out of the business. So, it is a matter of our survival, because our competitor can sell cheap and still make money. So, who will buy from us? So, if you want to keep running the company or keep running this organization or business, we need to bring this change. So, we need to convince, we need to be very clear about why we are doing it, and then we probably create a desire in the people to participate in this particular change, and then come up with a detailed roadmap, talks about how do you learn new skills, how gradually it get implemented, how gradually the reporting structure, metric system, the measurement system changes, and how this will become a new way of working or a future state way of working in your plant space. So, that is a structured approach. Change can originate from internal influence or external sources. So, now in the example I took, where I was talking about the change which was coming as a project deliverable, sometime you may do the project itself for change management, where you have a new government law, new compliance, new technology has been introduced, and now your role is to make your team, your organization, your group ready for that particular thing. So, there could be various sources which might be bringing change, and as we learn in our project space as well, the world is becoming more and more dynamic, the word complexities are increasing. The adaptability and resiliency is not a project specific characteristics alone, it is an org level characteristics now, and we need to change the organization to be ready for that in many cases, and you as a project leader might be playing a key role there. So, there could be an internal changes, could be an external changes. Example of internal changes could be the change in the management, merger and acquisition, change in your processes, sometime you want to adopt a particular compliance, all those could be internal reason. External things could be geopolitical, environmental, financials, all those things. Enabling change can be challenging, not all stakeholders may embrace the change. Now, the idea here is there will be a different response to the changes by the different people. As we learned, the human behavior brings a one type of complexity. So, when you are dealing with a change, that complexity has to be taken care. There will be few individuals who might be losing their position, or they may perceive this change as a negative for their own benefits, and they may resist for this particular change. Some people may have a just fixed way of doing, they may not get convinced, they may not find the new way of working beneficial, or they just want to focus on old habits. There will be few who may be excited to bring the new change, and they may want to really adapt to the new change or new idea. So, different people at different point in time may react differently. Why I say different point in time? Initially there could be a high resistance environment, later on when some unit has migrated, started using it, the resistance may start going down. When say 60% of the people started using the new robot, then whole resistance may go further down. So, we need to deal with the different stakeholder based on the different time and context differently. Now, attempting too much changes in a short duration can lead to a change fatigue and a resistance. Each individual has some amount of capacity to handle change mentally. So, the whole thing is most of us want to have a predictable thing. When you want to go to office, when you want to go home, you want to see things in a order, in a pattern which matches with your old pattern, with your old thinking. Now, assuming when you go to home every day, there is a new home design. Something is moved from one place to another place, you may get irritated afterwards. What is happening? We are changing things every day. So, if you are doing things too frequently in a space, there could be a place where people start getting frustrated because they have a fatigue about the change, because you may not be able to be vigilant and aware all the time. So, we need to balance that. We need to give people time to digest it. Say, assuming you want to change multiple things in your house, you may probably want to do it in such a way, either you do a big bang approach, you change it once and then only introduce to people so they can absorb it once, or you do in an incremental way depending upon how people want to work, but you do not want to prolong so long things that every day they have a new things to deal with. So, that could create a fatigue. So, again, it depends upon the context and individuals. So, as a project leader, we should be sensing it. The system interaction, we should be sensing and building adaptability in our whole approach of managing change as well. Stakeholder engagement and motivation approach, assist in overall adapting the change. Now, there are various models, but this principle stays at a high level to facilitate this particular change management. There are various approaches and recommendations, but in general, the idea here is, why are we doing this change? Because we want to achieve project outcomes. We want to reduce the operational cost in this example. So, people who really drive, who are behind that particular outcome, someone who is funding it, and there are people who are expected to support it. Now, if we are working with them closely as a project leader, sharing my problems, sharing my progress progressively, that is something needed in order to achieve the desired state. Working with stakeholder is always needed, but here it is needed more because most of the work is done by the stakeholders. See the difference. When you were working on a project, you had a project team. Now you have produced a deliverable, a robot. Now this robot is getting used by an operational group. Here, who is going to use it? People who are not your project team, who may not report to you, who has their own bosses, who may not like what you are telling them, probably. They have their own interests. So, when you are working here, you need to work more in an influential space, because you probably can't make them do things, and your engagement with them is also relatively for a shorter duration. And there could be a more complexity involved, because they might be dealing with other vendors and all. So, project was sufficiently complex, but this environment is far more complex than your project. So, in order to deal with this particular environment, different interest areas, stakeholders, you need to primarily work with stakeholder engagement, see their motivation and try and find a way, rather than try, find a way to align their motivation towards the desired change. How can I create a desire in individuals to support the change is something I will keep thinking when I am working in this particular operation. So, the overall change was always part of our work. We were more focused on change which was happening in a project space, but now what we are learning in this particular principle is, we need to focus on enabling the change as a change agent with our project results, so that the organization future state, the envisioned, the visualized future state can be achieved. So, support it with the help of continuous stakeholder engagement and following a structured approach for managing or driving the change.